Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad, Kuttan.
You're watching Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Now, tonight on the show, we'll be delving into the challenges for the advertising industry as the pandemic has led to an almost immediate drop in ad spend. Harmandar Singh, or better known as Ham, joins us on the line now. He's the founder of Sledgehammer Communications, which publishes Marketing Magazine, and he's an industry stalwart, having been in brand communications now for almost 30 years. Good evening, Ham. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. I want to begin by talking about the impact of the pandemic on ad spend globally, but also what's happening locally. Now, I've seen some statistics that show that more than a quarter of media buyers, planners and brands have actually paused their spending this year. Ham, what have been your observations of the immediate consequences of COVID on the advertising sector, also on ad dollars?
Well, for starters, advertisers are obviously affected by the pandemic, like the rest of the planet. So they are forced in response to being cautious. They are now in a territory which they are unsure of, mainly because economic activity has stopped. When money stops circulating and we don't go to the office and we don't do our regular things, commerce also comes to a stop or is greatly affected. This affects the clients because they have originally, in the good days, in the normal days, have a regular and dependable supply chain. So their product comes first, and then comes the marketing and the advertising. So they are still sorting out that supply chain side, and most of them have done so. But I think most of them have also said that advertising can be put on the back burner for a short while.
Ham, does the industry monitor the situation, the health of the industry? Do we actually have any numbers to sort of hang these general observations that you have on?
Yes, market research company Nielsen is one of the media currencies that actually track measurement. The other one is Kuttan, which is also very, very effective. And they measure advertising expenditure on television, radio, print, and all that. Right. For many years now, or rather in recent years, generally speaking, you can say that there's been a downward trend in print advertising and an upward trend in digital advertising. So yes, those figures are available.
Okay. You mentioned, the good old days, the pre-pandemic days where, we had companies focusing a certain budget of the expenditure towards advertising. I'm wondering, Han, maybe you can give us a sense. What exactly did the pandemic interrupt? Were we on the uptrend? Was the advertising industry growing? Were we seeing more bigger budgets being allocated to ad spend?
Well, Malaysia, for all intents and purposes, is regarded as a growing economy or fast developing nation. So you will always find that advertising expenditure in our market is in the plus. It's on an upward trend. Whether it's +1 or +2, it's always in a plus because of our economic stage of our economic growth. So pre-pandemic, our advertising expenditure was also going up. But you could say that before the pandemic set in, that means the early part of this year, January or so, there was basically a state of flux in the industry in terms of uncertainty. And this relates to digital, because a lot of fraud is detected in digital. Not enough measurement or not enough reliability can be based on digital measurement. And we also find that it was the beginning of the year, so most marketers were reevaluating their media choices. So we were already actually in a stage of flux when the pandemic hit.
Ham, it's often said that there have been winners, not just losers in the current situation over the last year, and there's been a lot of economic activity online, a lot of buying and selling online. What do you see in that sense? I mean, has that spilled over to the ad world? I mean, there's a lot of these platforms that are, in fact, doing a roaring business. Has that had an impact on advertising?
Certainly. It is no secret that e-commerce is way up. Deliveries, food delivery, online food deliveries on the way up, trend. Also tech vendors doing very well. So there are some winners in that space. Now, on the advertising side, from the agency's point of view, whether they're media, digital, or brand or creative agencies, they also have restructured their resources and their offerings and factored in new tools which they can offer to their clients in relation to e-commerce, right, providing back-end support, and together with that, the relevant messaging that goes along with their marketing.
Right. Well, I'm glad that you brought up agencies, Ham, because, you know, I'm wondering, not too long ago, there were a number of boutique agencies kind of flourishing, mushrooming in the industry. The impact on the advertising sector, Ham, does size matter when it comes to agency? Does it matter if you are an arm or a chapter of a multinational agency, or if you are a boutique agency trying to tailor into the local market? Does that mean you're struggling to weather the pandemic?
Yes. So in the case of, say, a media agency whose prime bread and butter is buying media space, planning, and strategizing the client's creative or communication across many media platforms, for them size does matter, because then they can take the inventory and bulk it together to get volume discounts or other advantages which they pass on to their clients. So for them, because from a bargaining point of view, size does matter. Now, for creative agencies that come up with ideas and build brands and all that, no, that talent matters in that sense. And most of the big agencies have the good talent also, so you could say that the talent is there, but not as far as creative is concerned, it is not about the size. There will also be downsizing of people in most agencies across categories, digital, media, or creative. And a lot of them have now actually gone on their own, and creative people especially. And clients are dealing with them directly, for example. So size does not matter. And of course, with the pandemic, it's a level playing field. Any agency, anywhere in the world.
Ham, you know, I hear what you're saying about, what's happening in the industry and perhaps the job losses as they've been across, the economy. But how do you kind of make an argument for the pain that the industry is going through? I mean, should we be thinking about the consequences of the crisis for the ad industry in terms of job losses or in terms of, enterprises shutting down? Is there any help for that? Is government, are you even on the radar? I mean, do you have enough votes to matter?
Excellent question, Sharaad. The association has reached out to the government and put in a paper of sorts to seek help a few months ago. I believe zero response. You can also say that the situation with the authorities is also kind of like a touch and go, and they got other things on their mind probably. But they should actually have the industry, because we are an engine of commerce. And because of that, we are going to be the key driver for economic recovery moving forward. Like, for example, in England, yes, agencies apply to the government. They get loans and stuff like that. And some agencies have even started paying back. Right. So those kind of incentives and those kind of relief are things that people do in developed markets. And we should do the same here, because economic activity, marketing activity is actually something that is stimulated by advertising. And but we have a different warped concept of what the creative economy is.
Well,
as far as our powers to be, they think the creative economy is about dancing on the stage or some animation series. No. It's more to do that. It's got to do with ideas and changing the world.
Ham, but what we've seen in this past few months is that perhaps there may not have been as much, monetary help for the advertising industry. But what we've seen is, as companies cut advertising budgets, governments have stepped in. Governments have emerged as advertisers and advertising buyers. They're promoting their stimulus packages and their public health efforts. Do you see an issue with this, that government is now an advertiser?
Yes, of course, I see an issue. Well, there are limited opportunities to survive as an agency if we are going to be reliant on government advertising. And the evaluation process is another story altogether, which I think I have covered extensively in my magazine. I don't believe that the people who are in authority or in position to make decisions on behalf of the government are actually qualified even to decide what are the great ideas. But nevertheless, yes, the government has been spending money on advertising, and when we hear about the tourism, some new mandate for the next 10 years being announced this morning. So let's see how that moves forward.
So, Ham, I feel, actually, to be honest, I feel your pain. And I think not getting a response of government is rather poor on their part. Not understanding, actually, the nature of the industry is also perhaps a more general problem. But when you talk about Malaysia and the size of our market, has it meant that that there are always going to be limits on what can be done in Malaysia? Was that always a problem for us?
Well, it's true. In comparison to Indonesia, for example, we are a very small market as a consumer base. Interestingly, in the monetary value, we are actually equal to Singapore. Now, I don't know whether that's got to do with currency or whatever, but Malaysia, even though it's a small market, it's a dynamic market. You could say the entire makeup of Asia is in Malaysia. You can do test marketing here. You can appeal to different races here, so to speak. Yeah, you can actually study it. So it's a very good test market, very diverse market. And finally, Malaysia has actually been outstanding in the past as a creative powerhouse. Our ideas have won Grand Prix in Cannes and all across the world. We have been world best before, but last 10 years we've been not doing that.
Oh dear. Okay, well, on that note, Tam, we're going to take a quick break, but let's come back and dissect what you just brought up. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more on Consider This, so stay tuned. Thanks so much for staying with Sharaad and I on Consider This. Let's continue our conversation with the publisher of marketing magazine, Harmandar Singh, better known in the industry as Ham. Ham, let's talk a little bit about long-term transformation. Of course, the pandemic is likely to shape the advertising industry in the long term. I mean, businesses are prioritizing survival for now, but it's likely that in the near future they will have to find ways of brand building, of marketing, of advertising. What changes do you think will likely stick with the advertising sector?
Good. So moving forward, whenever the recovery sets in, I believe that we won't see anything worth talking about until end of next year in terms of some normalization. But what we've been through, as far as the pandemic is concerned, it's a very hard lesson. It's going to be a lifelong lesson. And we can't brush it off as, pandemic over, so we're back to the good old ways. No, not that. And through this phase, the hard lessons that we have learned is how we now can refine and sharpen our focus when it comes to businesses and when it comes to how we craft our messaging. So 2021, moving forward, will be, my belief is that it will be a time when we define personalization. We will be looking at creating messages which are more meaningful than before. Connecting on a personal level is going to be the big deal. And I see mobile platforms leading the way on that score.
Ham, can we come back just briefly to the issue that you brought up earlier about how at one point we had quite a bit of talent, and a talent that was recognized globally in terms of the creative side of the industry, but that it's been in decline for 10 years. What exactly is going on? Why the decline? Because we know we have talented people. Are we not training them? Are we not attracting them? Is remuneration not sufficient, or are we losing them to other markets?
Excellent question. At last count, I had about 73 people, good talent, who have left our market. So our brain drain is more of a brain bleed, and that has been going on for the past decade or so. it is, I have been to the global advertising festivals, and I see regularly Malaysians go out there and pick up the top awards, but they don't come home to Malaysia. They go back to where they live, China, Singapore, India, or whatever. They are not here. They are in New York. So there has been a massive brain drain, and if we don't bring them back, we can't talk much about the creative economy as an innovative player.
Is it a push or is it a pull?
It's a pull.
It's a push. So they don't want to come back because they don't see opportunity?
It's both.
So they don't want to come back to Malaysia because they don't see opportunity here? Is that what you're saying?
Well, there's a good reason why they left. I think first would be continuity. Creative people, for example, most of these are creative people, yeah, need expression and need rewards and need recognition, and they find it stifling here for whatever reason. Money is a big draw. Singapore and China have been actively pursuing them. When they go out, they are already part of a network, a global network. For example, they're already working for a global network's office in Malaysia. So the opportunities that come to them come through the network. I mean, I wouldn't turn down an offer to work in New York if I'm good and they recognize me. So the competition to keep the talent is very, very difficult. We as an industry has to rise and recognize these people, bring them back. I mean, that's what the first thing Talent Corp should do. I sent them a letter on this 3 years ago. So there you go.
Tam, okay, let's talk about Talent Corp, since it is, in fact, the remit of the agency to attract, Malaysian talent abroad home. What did you say in that letter, and what was their response?
I wrote a letter twice, sent it to the board at Talent Corp. I also gave down the list of the people, their talent, what they have achieved in the time that they've not been here. Some of them can't come back because they got married and they're happy and settled down. But some of them can come back, and I was going to offer myself as a conduit to talk to them. Zero response.
Well, it's very difficult to draw talent to come back if there are no jobs. And if you think about Malaysia in terms of its competitiveness and attractiveness for advertising companies to set up shop here compared to, say, a regional hub in Singapore, I mean, where would you rank Malaysia's attractiveness? Would they want to come and set up shop in Malaysia?
Well, very good question. When we think deeper about this, we have to plan. It is not impossible for us to create a creative caucus in Malaysia with the top brains working in the caucus. Now, I don't want to talk about the details because that will take forever. But if they don't come back to Malaysia to work in an agency, the government can still attract them to come here to do other things. These are creative people, and they express themselves in many ways. And they know about strategy, they know about positioning. I mean, they work on international brands. They can add value to our national economic ecosystem easily. If the government sees the potential, they will know what to do. I will know how to orchestrate it for them.
You brought up New York. It's very interesting because metropolitan center of the world, exciting cultural life, a city that's vibrant. Does Kuala Lumpur rate highly for people in the creative industries as a place they would want to work from? Richard Florida had that very famous, thesis about the creative class and how it's mobile and what it's looking for. Singapore tried to reverse engineer Richard Florida's thesis and make Singapore attractive. Is Kuala Lumpur attractive?
I would say that in ASEAN, I think the Philippines find Malaysia attractive, yes. For a certain time, Indian talent from India also found it attractive to come to Malaysia and work. But now their currency is stronger and the economy is stronger, so some of them are going back. Singaporeans don't see any interest in working in Malaysia, sorry. Indonesia, yes. They love Malaysia. I mean, culturally, there's a big fit. So Kuala Lumpur is an attractive destination for creative people for some markets. Yes.
Okay, Ham, we're running out of time tonight, but I do want to kind of get your thoughts to just kind of, conclude your thoughts as a conclusion. Where do you see the advertising industry going, and what would you like to see? You know, companies perhaps maybe starting to spend once again. Are you working with corporates perhaps to kickstart the ad spend once more?
Yes, I'm in constant touch with the marketing directors. That means the brand custodians, the people who are the clients, the ones with the budgets that actually drive messaging in the marketplace. And I find that they are very receptive to ideas. As far as the advertising industry is concerned, which is a service sector that services clients in marketing, they need to understand that it is creativity that sells. And if we don't have a spine, if we don't have standing, if we don't stand up for our ideas, then we will become like just everything else, and we become commoditized. This is what is lacking in our industry, spine. I hope there is more spine. I remember my good old friend, the late Yasmin Ahmad. She stood up for her ideas. And advertising meant something when you actually fight for your ideas. I don't see that happening. I don't see people fighting enough. I don't see people defending their ideas. So I want to see more of that, because without that, we will diminish our value in whatever context.
Well, Ham, thank you so much for being on the show with us tonight and sharing your insights on the advertising industry. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That's all we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan, signing off the evening.
Thank you so much for watching, and good night.